Hi, Raymond O'Brien. Welcome, everybody. This is my guest, Raymond O'Brien. He is an intuitive healer and a multiple NDE survivor. So, Raymond, could you please go ahead and get started with your story for the audience?
Well, first things, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Pontia, for asking me. It's a real privilege to spread what I have experienced over the last 16 years since my real kind of roller coaster ride of having my death experiences and coming back and what I've learned and still am learning up to this point. Um, I didn't think what had happened to me could be surpassed, but it truly has. Um, it's been difficult first few years. For those who don't really know about my background, I come from a family of healers, seers. On my mother's side, went back to a couple of generations with my mother. Really, father was a beautiful Irishman. Spent an awful long time in the armed forces. He was away a lot. Proper man's man. Mum was just a beautiful mother. Taught me what I know today, and had some words of wisdom for me about my past life. I would probably say it was a drug-addled life. Loved alcohol. I had a love affair with other drugs, other substances. I kind of knew something was different about Raymond. But I was very afraid of the vulnerability side of, stopping the instant hits that I was getting against the long-term learning that I was trying to be taught and wasn't really paying attention to. So this went on for years and years and years and years. And I felt lost, really felt lost. I ended up having in total 10 cardiac arrests, 6 heart attacks, and I'm still here to tell the tale. I'd like to think that I paid, as we say in Irish terms, I paid the ferryman for the things that I've done. Every now and again, when I get an angina attack, I do believe you still haven't finished paying the ferryman. Just keep boundary rate, keep doing what you're doing, just to help others. That's my only way to try and find recompense. And I'm helped an awful lot by some beautiful people, yourself included, Pontia. As I said, I was running away from what I should have been doing. I thought, as being a seer, I thought everyone could do it, to be honest with you, at first. Now I know that everybody can. It's having the time to do that and to have the right teacher, and the right beliefs. So I was still misbehaving. My mother told me, you've got to sort yourself out, otherwise something bad will happen to you. And I did make a quip to her, just an off the cuff comment. Well, it'll have to be pretty bad, Mum, because of some of the things that I've been up to. She said, and she just said it will. And lo and behold, to keep the story quite condensed as much as I possibly can, because it's such a wonderful story. I ended up being told by my soul, God, voice, that I was going to die. And I took that, obviously, I took that very seriously. Got home, rang my mother. When I got home, she asked me who told me. I told her the voice, and then that was the end of the subject matter. 3 days later, I'm in the back of an ambulance outside my house, being resuscitated. Bounced off to A&E, where it went from a beautiful experience. The first cardiac arrest was in the back of the ambulance, recorded cardiac arrest. I believe it was the second one. I think the first one happened in the house when I collapsed, and I managed to pick the phone up, collapsed on the floor. My beautiful cat, who I had saved from being mauled by a dog, maybe about a year before, I remember saying to him, "You owe me one, buddy," and he was the one who licked my nose, which brought me around on my front room floor with the phone in my hand. And here within the UK, if you want to call the emergency services, instead of it 911, it's 999. And I'd only managed to do 2 nights before I just passed out, blacked out. and there was my little saviour, my four-legged cat, Mr. B. So that was the first. Second one was in the back of the ambulance, and that was when I believe I went to the other side. I'd met three beautiful female angels and two male angels. There's a part two to this story, with one of the angels who I met in St Thomas's Hospital maybe 6 months later. He was called Fred the Angel. He was a spiritual minister. Fred Matman was his real name.
Yeah,
I
those
nicknamed
kind
him
of
Fred
names
the Angel.
sometimes, like Fred or Bob.
Sorry?
It's funny how angels will have those names, right? Sometimes when they appear in human life, it's like the Fred or it's
Yes.
John.
Yeah. I've got a picture of him somewhere. He just looked like Santa Claus, as was one of the angels that I'd met on the other side. And so to be a second time in hospital with heart issues again, and to see the man in the bed opposite me, who looked like the guy who I'd met on the other side, was just staggering. And I knew then, Pontia, that the 9 days that I was going to spend with him was going to be magical, and it was. But that's the part two. So in total, I'm in A&E. I'm seeing horrific things. I'm going to the other side, backwards and forwards. I'd seen my life force drain out of me. I'd seen movement within the A&E room. I knew that I was dying. I knew that. That is something which I've always carried with me. But here's something which you don't often hear about, and it's neglected in our recovery. It's the run up to our deaths. It's, some of us, it's not instantaneous. For myself, it was a gradual decline. I asked the heart surgeon, do I have these issues because I was a big drinker, I was a big smoker. He said, no. He said, it doesn't matter what you've done. He said, this would have come to you. It's hereditary, Ray. So I thought, okay, but it was the run up to my death that I paid very little attention to until life had settled down and I was able to start to process what had actually happened. What was I like on the run up? I remember I used to have my own little plumbing and heating company. And I used to work on construction sites. That was initially what I used to do. And I remember being on a job carrying my tools upstairs and how much I found it exhausting to do that, and how my attitude to life had changed, how my attitude towards things which were really beautiful and special to me. I found I was becoming much more snappier, or sleeping an awful lot. And then, obviously it was the artery was slowly closing up, and it was starting to block the blood. I had my very first heart attack as I was driving to work one morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I had to pull over on the side of the highway. The pain was excruciating. But these are things which we don't realize. I didn't realize it was the loss and the grief of Raymond. No one told me about that. When I came back, I wasn't the same person that I was when I left 24 hours earlier, an hour, 2, 3 hours earlier. I didn't know who I was, and that was where I had to start picking up the pieces. Getting help was something very troublesome. I didn't understand the consequences of having such an event. I didn't understand the disconnection from family. I didn't recognize any of my family when they came to the hospital to see me. Just that was mind blowing. It was absolutely, when the nurse said to me, "Your family's here," I had to really think about what did the word family mean. And then,
Reset almost. I mean, the vocabulary of family was kind of reset, you're saying.
yeah, I didn't. I just had to think, what does that mean? And these people filed in to the room at the bottom of my bed, and I realised that they were all really upset. But for me, I couldn't understand why. So I went along with it, and I lived that life for maybe 6 or 7 years, until I became older, shall we say, because I felt like I was reborn. So I think in lifetime terms, I'm 16, whereas I'm far older than that now. But it was putting back in what I'd lost, and I was very fortunate to find people who were good people, who could really help me on my journey. But that was the hard part.
The
Um,
right
the,
team that understands NDEs and how much people change, and right, like people change a lot after NDEs. Like I feel like for me 2 years ago, I lost so many of my memories. I don't even remember. So it's like, and then you're right. It's kind of like I was only Dr. Kim that like was like, you had an NDE, and I was like, I did. Like I didn't even know, you know. So it's like we need to more training on it, right? For people like to be able to help people come back and kind of like yeah, like the social life and everything and be learn at the timing thing, right? Like I feel like I'm never on time anymore ever since my ND. I don't even know what watches are. So, right. Do you feel like that changed
I've,
like timing and things like that too? Like,
I've had to, in actual fact, I do tend to tease people a little bit, because of the very reason that you're talking about. Is
yeah.
that I don't live my life to. All right, I know for our appointment today, but I kind of already knew just by what your soul has said to me. This will happen. It'll all fall into place, Ray. Getting the emails, getting the Zoom invite right, and it has. So it has slowed me down. One of the biggest things which I'm combating at the moment is helping other counsellors who can't get the experience to help others. I've seen an awful lot of counsellors. I've actually lost count of how many counsellors I've had. I found for a lot of counsellors, it's too much for them. There's an awful lot of TA. There's also an awful lot of projection. People want to know for their own fears. So you tend to find, this is what I found. I'm not saying it's the same for all counsellors, but my experience, which has made me help to teach other counsellors about how do you deal with us, how do you deal with the way that we turn, how do you deal when we come back, when we don't have the same important aspects in our life anymore. I'm very much pragmatic about life now. I had a moment last week where the angina was like, oh my God, it was so painful, and I had to say to myself, you might go now, you might go at this moment. So where are you within your mind with this? What are you going to say? What am I going to say to the person sitting next to me who's watching me have this moment? There's an awful lot to be taught to others about where we are with it. It's not. I have found I've gained. I don't know about you, Pontia, but I've gained some beautiful insights
Yes, please share
in
though. That
doing
would be
what I do.
yeah, all the ND insights because you've had so many near-death experiences, right?
Yes, yeah, I have. I
Insight.
truly have, and it's nice. It's nice to pass on. There's a big difference between which I've also realised of the near death and the verified death. So I try to now stick with verified deaths. So were you medically? Did they resuscitate you? Did your heart stop? Because what I'm finding is that a lot of my work, people would come to me and they said that they'd had a near death experience. And one of the next things I asked was, were you verified? Were you hospitalized with that? Because it matters to how I will treat you. If you haven't, well then, my experience is I was resuscitated. I know what it's like to go. I'm going
Resurrection.
to die.
Felt resurrection. The power of
Yes,
resurrection, which
yeah,
is a psychic power we all have, is the power of resurrection, right?
yes, yes,
Specifically,
yes.
that was
It's
what was activated. But when that resurrection happens, everything in the body alchemically changes, right? It's like a complete
not,
dissolving of the old body completely. But then the physical effects still have to be repaired, right? Kind of like that's what you're dealing with right now, right?
yeah. That is. I don't know about you. I found that I followed a lot of paths which I probably shouldn't have done. Now, on reflection, just through knowledge, I think the biggest thing that I say to my clients is listen to you. Like, it's the listening. Again, that's another thing that I've picked up along the way, and I now teach to others. It's surprising that many of us are told things, and the first instinct is to disregard it because we're not getting physical proof of it. Which is, within this world, that this we can't settle a contract without signing a piece of paper. It's there, it's in front of us. But when we're being told from the soul about what to do, unless it's a continuation and a practice of, if I listen, then this doesn't happen to me. And I've had that experience over the last lifetime
So
of
you heard
how
your
to listen.
soul. I'm sorry, did you hear your soul since you were a kid, or do you feel like the NDEs kind of opened it up more for you? Because I know you came from a family, your mom obviously was very spiritually gifted, so you would have inherited the genetics. A lot of our gifts come genetics, right? Did you could hear your soul as a kid, or did it kind of get louder with the NDEs and
I
stuff?
could, I could, I used to use it a lot when I was a kid because Pops was in the army. We used to move every 2 years, and sometimes we'd jump from one country to another. And I used to find that really difficult, because you'd really stand out because you'd have a different accent, or you couldn't really understand what they were talking about. So I used to listen to the voice. I remember standing in front of the class and being introduced by the teacher. I don't know, maybe I was 6 or 7. This is Raymond. He's come from Germany. And I remember looking through the class, and I picked the boy out who she had picked to show me around. I'd always, somebody said, he's the one who's going to show you around. And then she said, whatever the child's name was, will you take care of him for today? Show him around. So I'd already known. But when you're a child, and I know you'll get this, everything is so much more stronger. You're just an open book. Just keep filling me. But after a while, I believe we get corrupted by the educational system, which means, then, quite possibly, it's that if you don't behave, well, then bad things will happen to you. If you behave, then you'll be rewarded. It's that kind of way. There's no room for the grey area. So for us
Kids that
who
are
are seeing,
special, the kids that are special in schools like us, the psychic ones, the special ones, they get put in special needs classrooms. They label them a diagnosis. They want to medicate them. They want to put them in
yes,
corners. Like it's just, yeah, exactly. So that's kind of
that's
what
that's
thing too, but your intuition was guiding you. I often see that God, for people that are going to have very hard lives, he kind of gives them the gift that they can hear him from the beginning. And I feel like that's like how we survive it, right? So, I mean, you
yes.
way more than I have, but still it's like that's kind of the gift that I'm like, ah, like he does make us go through these hard things, but he never leaves our side, which is crazy.
Yes, yeah, yes, and and I think that's one of the other lessons that I've had is,
Mhm.
regardless of what I've done, I know that I was never left alone, and now that's probably one of the biggest things within my life now is my faith. I can't live without that kind of faith. I'm so appreciative now of the boundaries that I have set for myself, which keep me as kind as I possibly can be throughout this life, for however long I've got left here. So I love that. I love to have that guidance, and that comes through my work. I don't do anything without that help. If I'm not allowed to do that kind of work, I don't. I just don't. If I can't work with somebody, I worked with somebody a couple of weeks back, in your country. Um, I was allowed to see what was wrong with them, not only before I worked with them, but while I was actually working with them, the soul started talking to me and telling me what else was wrong with this person. But Pontia, to be able to see that and to have, I know it sounds really cheesy,
No, no, I get it.
but to
To see
have
it and not
God
be
by
able
my
to give up.
side, it's just I'm not used to saying that.
Say
It's
it
a
again.
whole
So
different
to
person.
see it, but then not be able to help you mean? Can you repeat what you just said? Sorry. You said you saw it in them and then
Yeah, if I can't help a person, I'll know that. I'll be told. It is God who helps me do what I do. Um, Everyone who I work with, and I always used to say this to my mother as well, God rest her soul, was that everyone who I work with, Mum, gets the same level of treatment. There isn't, because you're my mum, it's extra special. It's across the board. That's how I felt that it was the right thing to do. I love the way that I'm guided. I adore that. It makes my work so much more easier. Um, when I was working with the person within your country the other week, just incredible results. Just, and you know, I hear that back. They've gone to the doctor. The doctor's like, "Wow, pal." I'm not saying it's me. I'm just not. But if there's something that I do when I talk to my clients, which helps them, well, then I'll do that. I'll know by what my soul tells me whether or not I can work with that person or not, whether they have to wait to come back to see me. You know, I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. I spend a lot of time in churches. Pontia.
Oh, you do. That's in England. There's a lot of beautiful churches, and you go
There
pray
is.
for people.
Yes, 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 yes.
Because I know England is the heart chakra of the planet, is what I've been told. Do you feel that's true? That is that because you know the planet had it has different chakras, and then they say England, where the Thor, what is that tower? That tower where there's that the Thor, something it's called, like like a really big portal I know over there somewhere.
There's one at Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Yes, of it's amazing. It's to to experience it. There's a very old church down here in my town, which was built in 1088, so it's well over 1,000 years old. Um, but yeah, but there used to be Roman villas, but down by the side of the river. But when there's a particular spot for me when I go into the church, so I sit at the back of the church, close my eyes, and I feel whatever it is come up through my feet, comes up through the body, and just bangs out the top of the head. So yes, it's chakras, energies. England is full of ley lines. You know, one church will connect another church by what they call like, it's almost like a power line.
The earth
So
system.
they're connected.
Yeah.
Just
Like the chakras of
stunning.
the earth and the meridians. So can you tell us a little bit about, because I also asked you about Jedi's and Sith, because I know, you know, your email for people that want to contact Raymond. Raymond, can you please say your email? And then I'm going to ask about Jedi's and Sith after. So
Okay.
email?
My email address is, if you want to contact me, is rayob1 at live.co.uk. So that's RAY, the numeral one, at live.co.uk. So that's how you can contact me.
And I will
Um,
put that in
uh,
the bottom too. But yeah, so Obi-Wan
Thank
was
you.
a great Jedi, right? Why do you
Thank
think
you. Yeah, that's
Obi-Wan was
me.
a great Jedi? And how can we be good Jedis and not become Sith, seeing all this darkness? Sometimes I just understand Anakin so well, wanting to blow up that village after they hurt his family, but we want to stay in our Jedi light and be loving. So could you go give us some advice for that, for all of us?
Well, do you know what? That's a really lovely question. Thank you. And I'm going to draw on my really good friend, the Reverend Bill McDonald. Um,
Love Reverend Bell. He's all he's the
he,
best.
he's like I've been so he's just such a wonderful guy, isn't he? I've been so lucky to have him as a friend. I don't talk to him as much as I used to. I think that's part of my death experience. Kind of closes me down quite a lot, and I feel sadness about that. You know, sometimes I have every intention to speak to everyone, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I just fancy being on my own. So there's an awful lot of that going on. So anyone else who's had, you know, the same experiences, don't think it's strange that, you know, for you to feel this way. Um, you know, it's very easy to get hung up with how you should feel after your death experience. It's you know, I don't know about you, Pontia, but I was like a sunflower. I was turning to everyone who I thought could give me an answer, They were the life force, which I thought, I needed to hear this, and maybe I did. But Bill was one of the ones who I don't know. It's like I've known him for a lifetime. I met him at IANS in 2019 in I think it was Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. I always get the two mixed up. I do apologise. So yeah, Bill says it a lot, but I didn't understand it, and I only said this to him within the last month. He used to say about loving, and I used to take that as a sign of weakness. To me, I got more satisfaction out of hating somebody. I fed off it. It gave me something back, and it's a lovely thing while you're gorging on that. But pretty soon you run out of things to hate, and that's when the problems start. And I knew that it was no good for me. And I would watch Bill's videos, and he would always go on about love, and I couldn't understand it. And then I went to see him in Brighton when he did his tour. That was magical to see him in my country. And we connected again, and he spoke about the love, and I still didn't get it. And I bumped into my brother, who I hadn't seen for 16 years, in a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere. And a lot of water had crossed under the bridge, and I thought of Bill, about what he said about love, that it's not a weakness. It's a real power. So I think, in answer to your Seth and the Jedi, I know it sounds really simplistic, but it's a hard thing to do. It's to just if somebody's really harmed you, to go, well, yeah, it has hurt an awful lot by what you've done, or these people have done. But I would prefer to have that form of love than to be gorging on a bowl of hate, and that's what I've learned out of it. It's brought me enormous sense of peacefulness, which I really didn't expect. So that is something now. I'm not saying that I don't ever get angry with people. I do. I'm not superhuman. I still have my own faults, and I've got an awful lot of them. But that's probably the biggest thing, is to settle the mind when it comes to things or people who've done you wrong. You can forgive, and it's okay not to forget, and I think that's part of life lessons, really.
Yeah,
And it's all right to be vulnerable.
feels more fair that way. It's like, we could forgive and let it go and come to neutral, but like if somebody has hit my kid, I'm not gonna let them next to my kid. That doesn't mean like I forgave them, now they can, I'm not gonna
Yes.
have self-respect. I think self-respect is different from hurting them. But then yeah, like you're right. Like when we come back into love, we have more peace and power. So whatever harm
Yes.
they've done, we can actually repair it better anyways. But if I'm busy fighting them for what they've done to somebody I love, I don't have energy to help the person I love, right? And they want us to almost fight back instead of focusing on energy on the proactive things and our purpose. So
Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Ponty, I couldn't put it better myself. So I think that's a huge life lesson for me. Never give up. It's another one. It's fight until the very end. My father had a great saying: "There's no pockets in a shroud, Raymond." Think about. I found the most valuable things for me are what I get back from people. Whether that's teaching them about how I've got to this point, how I've got the resilience that I have. I think that's another thing.
that's
Recognize
a
your
good one.
powers.
How did you get the resilience that you have? That's a good one for people to kind of talk.
Sorry.
How do you think you got the resilience that you have?
Oh, I think it's epigenetic. I think it comes from my father was from an Irish background. The Irish are renowned as fighters. We come from a tribe in Ireland called the O'Briens, so we're quite. There's not a lot of us, but we're very good fighters. My mother spent time through the war her resilience, being hungry and everything that else happened after the war. The rape of Germany. It's just appalling behaviours on all sides. Yeah, I think it's got to be in there. It just has to be. Not all of us have it. I understand that. But it's recognizing it. It's giving a nod to it. That's the other side of it. It tells you who you are. And sometimes if you're in a real bad spot, before. I think my biggest point of resilience, I just want people who are coming up to death to recognise this, because there are going to be people who are going to be watching this and who maybe don't have long to live.
Yes, it's good for people to know
It's,
what to
it's
do when facing death. That's important. The angel of death, Israel, like, right, he comes. I saw him. I see him whenever I see him. One of my friends goes, and I'm like, "Don't come near me again, Israel. We're not talking." But how do people, yeah, it's like it's such a scary thing. It's not about like sometimes people aren't scared of their own death. Sometimes people are scared of other people they love dying. Sometimes people are afraid of their own death. And sometimes people don't know what's after death. So those three parts, if there's anything you could say to that, it would be so helpful.
I would say probably one of the most important things that I've learned is if you're okay with dying, well, wonderful. I'm envious of you. I wish I was that cool about it, and some people are. But for those who are deeply loved by us and maybe don't have a sudden death, there is no warning, but maybe if they've had a long drawn out illness, 4 or 5 years, just remember that some of the things that you will hear from that person who is suffering, it's not them talking, so don't think that is them. I made that mistake, made a huge mistake with that, and
That's
but
a good one. Yeah.
sorry.
That's a really good one because they do say a lot of things when they're in the hospital, they're not feeling well. They might be upset, angry, we just don't treat them. We just act like they're dealing with a trauma and we're just trying to calm a baby. That's how I've been looking at the ill feelings. Like there's just a little baby having a trauma. Just need to keep them calm right now.
Yes, it's some will know that they've misbehaved, or in their concept of misbehaving. And that was one of the issues for me. It's like I remember saying something to my mum. I won't tell you what it was, but she just turned and bit my head off. You should be ashamed of yourself for saying that, she said. And I carried that. I carried that for an awful long time until I realised that this is when I came back after my event. I didn't think about the run up to death. How was oxygen starvation affecting me on a daily basis? How's my train of thought working? If there's somebody else in your family who's suffering pain, how does that affect their train of thought? Their patience. I carried that for an awful long time until I understood. It was like the reasons why some of us, myself included, become this way is because we're dying. And I don't mean to make that
Well,
any
you
bigger
have to
than it
say it
is.
like it
It's
is,
the truth.
When people are
So
dying, they
it's
get more moody because they don't have as much oxygen in their brain. We have to say that.
yes.
Their
So it's
heart's
not.
not
It's
getting
not. Don't
oxygen, right?
take
So
it.
it's kind of like and oxygen affects our mood a lot.
Absolutely. I experienced that when we had the pandemic,
Mhm.
that I became suddenly really ill, and they put a stent into my heart, and the arteries started collapsing over the front of it again. And so you know what it was like when the pandemic, you couldn't get into a hospital for love nor money. And just one day out of the blue, one of the very people who had one of the very doctors who was open-minded like you and I, he was an amazing guy. He was from Iran. Beautiful soul.
I'm Persian too. Just kidding.
How are you? Amazing. Oh, there you go. This,
Persian power, everybody. Just kidding.
I love that Persian. He was an amazing guy. Was really in tune with death experiences and things like that. Wanted to know What was it like on the other side, Raymond? Who did you see? What did you see? He was really open to it. So he called me out of the blue, and he said, how have you got on with your heart operation? And I said, I haven't had it yet. I've been waiting 2 years for it. And he went, oh. So he said, leave it to me. The guy sorted it out. The next thing I know, I've got an appointment a couple of weeks later at St Thomas's Hospital in right opposite the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben, you know. And you got St Thomas's, Big Ben on the other side of the River Thames. I went there. I met a doctor called Dr. Baig, who says to me, we've got to do open heart surgery on you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But we're going to do a couple of tests on you first, you know, as they do. So I'd had these tests, and they managed to recannulate the blood vessel, open it back out. But this was the most beautiful thing. As they was about to discharge me, another doctor comes up to me, and he says, right, I'm going to, you know, send you on your way now, Mr. O'Brien. What's your occupation? So I said, well, it's a bit of an unusual one. I'm a seer, and you know, I'm a full-time counsellor as well. You know, who deal with people who have death trauma. Really? Yeah. He went, I'll be back in a few minutes. So he disappears. I'm standing there thinking, I wonder where he's gone. The guy comes back. He says, would you mind? He said, there's a patient here who we recovered last night. His heart stopped. He said it was a really traumatic experience for him. He said, but our in-house counsellor has diagnosed him as psychotic. He said, but listening to you, he said, we don't think he is. Because I went, okay, so would you have a chat with him? I said, yeah, I will. So they found me a little room. As I'm in there, the guy who resuscitated him came in. He was a really good friend of mine, by the way. But this is when I was working at hospitals. I still know most of the people there who were still there. And you know, we got talking about the difference of care. So getting back to, I'm all done. So I've sorted this guy out. I've had a chat with him, given him my number, and I've come back out. And the Persian doctor and the other Dr. Baig, they start talking to each other, and Professor Baig says, when we recannulated your artery, he went, we were amazed. He said, we can't understand with all of the death experiences that you've had. When we start to recannulate that artery, so we couldn't understand how you are still alive. And it was at that point where the Persian doctor said, he said, you don't understand because you don't know, Raymond.
Oh, I love that. Yes. He's a mystic. He understood the mystery that there's science and then there's God. And there's a connection.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, you know, I would say to people, just to sum up, you know, Pontius, thank you for giving me time to talk like this, because things have changed, you know, since I've been doing some other videos, I'm pleased to say. So it's you know, what I would say to people, if you're coming up to your own time to clock out of this beautiful planet, I would say to the families, the person who you're dealing with is not the person who you was dealing with before the start of the illness. I know that sounds really obvious, but I just want you to stop and think, why did they say that to me? You know, is it because they are ill? You know, did they know what they were saying? You know, don't carry that. Always leave room for that. You know, and because I assure you, I can guarantee you, I've been there. I've laid on my settee on my sofa like a cat for 18 hours a day when I thought this is the end. This is the end. You know, and this went on for weeks. So it gave me time to look at what it's like to have the run up to death again, because I didn't recognize it, you know, but it's an old friend to me now, you know, and I know what you're like. I know where I'm going to go. And so yeah, that's probably the biggest thing is like, give people that 3-second train of thought. Is it them or is it because they are ill, and the odds are on. What you find is that they are frightened to death, and there's no pun
Best
intended.
thing to do is to like be really loving to them, be very gentle with them, be patient with them, treat them
Yes,
like a little kid that's like scared, right? Like, God forbid any of us are going to be with somebody that's passing. That's we should look at, and if they say anything mean, they don't mean it. If they're scared, like just kind of love on them, love on them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's great advice,
I
right?
would, I just want to add one more thing to that,
Yes,
which
please.
many of us who are caring for somebody who's like that, it's all right to wish them to be gone.
Like if they're in a moment,
That was
God forbid, at that point, you're saying the
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's like it's all right. Don't feel bad for thinking that, because I think we all do that at some point. So
Yeah.
just remember that for yourself, if you are caring for somebody, don't beat yourself up. It's difficult enough. Yeah,
And is it good
if
to
you're
tell
really
them what
stuck,
they're gonna see on the other side? Because I've heard of people say like it's good to describe to them, like you're gonna go on the other side, you're gonna see your angels, you're gonna go to this higherly heavenly realm, because the people that are pure do go through higher heavenly realms when they pass. It's a real thing. And some of them will actually unite with source if they've, because a lot of people in this lifetime are going to be graduating. A lot of people have done a lot of hard work, right? So we can tell them
yes,
kind of things as well. Yeah
yes,
so
yes,
much,
yes.
Raymond, for being here. You're such a spiritual warrior. I'm so glad, thankful to Reverend Bill
Well,
and Dr. Kim for introducing me to you. And I know everybody's going to love this interview. And I'm going to put your email so people can contact you if they
thank you,
have had
Pontia.
death experience and they need support to kind of adjust back. And, so thank
I'd love to help. I'm here. Got an awful lot of experience, and again, Pontia, thank you, and Reverend Bill
you.
for
And Dr. Kim,
putting us.
he was also introducing us, all of them, our amigos, our soul family. So
Love it, love it.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see. Pause.